Adam.
Begin discussion. We will wait for Rana.
Share.
Yes, okay, let's wait. No, wait. Okay, so you can feel free to ask any question. And as my boss would say, students are priority. Oh. Okay.
Sir, you talked about populism, like recent populism among leaders, I guess, like, and its effect on multilateral system. I mean to say that if we look at the recent politics in India and also in US, so the kind of charismatic populism of a leader suddenly is much highlighted than other kind of democratic principles. So I mean, do you think like it leads to kind of another tendency to reorganize the world system in a different way, or I don't know, because we are also quite puzzled in India considering the questions of charismatic populism of a leader or something. So like in that way. So I mean, it's not a question as such, but I was wondering about. I mean, in a democracy where you talk about a leader which is like a charismatic or popular kind of imagination, so where do we stand? I mean, in that way. I was just perplexed about that.
I'm not totally sure I got your question well, but I'm just trying to react to what I understood. If I understood wrongly, please correct me. Yeah, charismatic populism is something I would not equate to a kind of democratic behavior or dialogue, or in the classical, well, if we leave the systems apart, if we leave aside temporarily the economic side of the issue, the classical liberal understanding of parliamentary multi-party democracy is that you have as actors political parties whose role would be to aggregate different opinions, reflect those opinions through programs, compete with these programs, and the assumption is that the system is a free competition of a program, and the best program wins. Of course, we know that it's not exactly the way it works. And one of the major factors of distortions is probably when you have a mobilization of voters or masses attempted and pursued through messages that have nothing to do with a long-term program, be it economic and social and whatever. Sometimes these are messages of hate, sometimes these are messages of blaming others for our pain, our poverty, our difficulties and problems. Well, I should not mention one country or another, because it happens almost everywhere today, and this is the problem. It happens too often, and perhaps India is one example. India has often been quoted as the largest democracy in the world, and it has many merits. I worked personally with officials from the Indian Electoral Commission, and I know that they are people very well trained, well prepared, and there is a huge machinery which is not to be, it's not a joke, it's a serious machinery, and they work seriously. I remember, for example, the man-women parity in elections, in political representation, is a problem everywhere. And political parties and governments and through political programs, people often try to correct that by introducing elements of a quota system. It exists in India, it exists even in France. But in France, for many, many years, parties have accepted to pay a fee, a fine, when they did not comply with the requirement of man-women parity in presenting their candidates. They thought it's politically more rentable, more to simply pay the fine and go on with the candidates they have chosen. I've asked a colleague from the Indian Electoral Commission, how do we do it in India? And he said simply, if the parties do not come with the quota system, I don't register them, period. I thought this was an excellent idea, but perhaps all things do not work so perfectly, even in India. I don't know if I responded to your question. Yes?
Yeah.
No, I was going to just add something on this idea of the charismatic leader. If you read the theoretician on these things, Ernesto Laclau, you will see that the charismatic leader is there because he thinks that he can make a shortcut through the democratic procedure and get to the aim quickly, disregarding the representation system, disregarding the procedure, disregarding the parties, because he embodies it is usually a he, I should say he or she, but experimentally it has been a he so far in most cases, because he embodies the induced will of the people, but it is not respecting the traditional democratic procedure, and yet they think that, for example, Perón in Argentina, who was the example for Ernesto Laclau, he was a populist, but he was also someone who organized the social state. He arranged the health system, public health system, schools, all these things that you think would come up through a democratic procedure, and yet he could do it in a way which was maybe much quicker, because he could mobilize and also through his wife, his second or third wife, Eva Perón, But it is better not to put too many hopes in such leaders, as we know from the experience thereafter, especially nowadays with Modi, Trump, or Bolsonaro, or Putin, you name it. Excuse me.
This was a comment, not a question, of course.
It was not a question, I'm sorry. I would have had a question.
No problem.
I think I can share, I think your concluding pessimism is reasonable and logical to me. But then finally you gave us some positive prospect. So in spite of state, problematic state multilateralism, you expect that there are still more communications or on the level of maybe civil, maybe like they have intellectuals exchanging or people's reason. But actually, there is figures, quite exactly shows that how the deglobalization has effects on the decreasing flow, cross-national flow of capital, of good, of people, of technology. Not only that on that level, but also have a significant decreasing in the tourists, cross-national tourists, and also those internet flow, or decline or decrease. So I think that so that kind of deglobalization included what you put on the positive prospect of more communication like that, and we have plenty of examples to illustrate that. For example, like the cross-strait, Taiwan Strait. You have now this ruling party have a gesture of anti-Chinese gesture. So on the state level, they are putting, they are suspending tourism, right? Taiwan has suffered from that economically. But not only so, this government, the government of Taiwan state put many measurements to decrease or intimidate the flow on the intellectual level or on the other level. I raise several examples for you. Recent years, since this regime, our communication, our visiting each others have been declined to news. And the students have been decreased significantly. Why? This state required some measurement. For example, if I invite a mainland scholar, our colleagues are interested in him, so we invite him for a visit, or a student for a visit, then I have to be responsible for, that's new requirements by this regime, for each day's his itineraries of each days. It puts a lot of pressure for our assistants work for assistants, and also a lot of trouble for us.
So that's the same for all foreign guests. We need to fill up, they go to Palace Museum, Taiwan University. It's the same, not only for mainland China scholars, but
Really?
yeah,
Whoa.
yeah, for decades.
You have to respond for everything I do?
Yeah, right.
Oh, too bad.
No, fill up that's the same as when we visit elsewhere. Because when I wanted to visit museums, or I also need to fill up all the forms.
But you need to form, but they don't check the actual itineraries.
No, right.
But those scholars, they will check, and then problems comes. So it makes us so intimidating, so troublesome that I say forget. Okay, then I'll save the problem. You know, so that's a state level. That's state level. Another example, we have been Lugan's Mazu temple, right? There's a very active Mazu pilgrimage, cross-strait pilgrimage used to be, and now still so. But then, you know, the state of these regimes were saying that that is Chinese remnants. That issue that 林非凡的发言，你记得吗？对不对 ？Yeah. So this kind of intimidation, you know, on the floor of yeah. So that's a contrary to you. So the state really make you know that you know communication or visiting or exchange on that level very difficult. And then we can have another example. You must know very much. Now there's something, you know, the Japanese there's a Japanese ban on certain technology, very crucial technology to Korean, right? And it make a Korean industry painful and you know, and then so not only technology ban, the Korean refused to go to visit Japan. So these kind of things happened also on the level that you gave us a positive prospect. You know, so and it is counted or measured as an index of deglobalization. The decrease of tourists, cross-national decrease, and also cross-national internet flow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is, your intervention is also more a comment which I appreciate, because I don't know enough about Taiwan and the situation of Taiwan, so thank you for helping me understand that better. I always thought that globalization was a kind of selective process. You have areas of human activity where it is fully fledged, global finance, for example. Global finance is the area where you have practically no obstacles to globalization. You can move billions of dollars in minutes from any country to, well, I think the big players, US, European banks, even banks that are based in small offshore, so-called fiscal paradises and so on. But global finance has the lowest level of, I would say, concerns and obstacles in the movement of money, of course. Then you have the goods, trade. Then you will already have, of course, the ideas that is always put forward for global competition, etc., is free movement of commodities. It's not free, we know. There are trade barriers, there are phytosanitary barriers, there are I don't know, health, other concerns, etc. And then you have the area where the barriers are highest, which is the movement of people, especially migrants, but other people too, sometimes. You offered some examples in the exchange of students, etc. So this fiction of a free global world is a fiction, and states do intervene on a selective basis, not equally on all areas, and the criterion for intervention is often a very old-fashioned one, which is the criterion of so-called national security. It can work to control economic espionage or military issues or even simple things as what is considered as political influence and so on. The world is far from being one world, of course.
Other comments or students, maybe?
Actually, I'm just curious about the relevance of the international. I'm just curious about the relevance of the international organization in the contemporary time. Like you mentioned that there is no such things as a society, and as similar there is no such things as an international community or organization. So as like United Nations doing in Afghanistan, so and United Nations is also like member of the United Nations. So what do you think these contradictory ideas, what they have their relevance in such type of international organization? And also you mentioned that the regional organization also doing this so well, but like SARC social South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. In the recent times, we also studied that the SARC has no better relevance in the South Asian countries like BRICS and SARC. So, what are you think about these organizations in the contemporary relevance?
Was your first question about internet or you mentioned internet? No.
The relevance of international organizations.
International.
Yeah.
The regional.
Regional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reason, yes.
They can be very relevant. I think, for example, the SARC. Members of the SARC are countries which have not always had very smooth, harmonious bilateral relations. Suffice to mention India and Pakistan,
Yes.
Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. They are all members of the SARC. So SARC can be a forum in which they can all participate regardless of their temporary or longer term frictions on the bilateral level. I remember we attended a meeting in, was it on migration and human rights in Kathmandu in Nepal, with the participation of colleagues from Pakistan, from India, from Bangladesh, from Sri Lanka. And at that time, the meeting was held in Kathmandu because Kathmandu, by the organizers, was considered as a place where all of them could meet, while it would have been difficult, for Pakistanis to come to Delhi, or from Indians to go to Karachi, or to Islamabad, so I think, yes, regional organization can play a role, not only in the economic field of economic cooperation. Then they establish rules, and whenever you have some sort of rules, whatever it is, whether it is on economic issues, on social issues, etc., the mere existence of rules acts as a kind of buffer and makes it easier to cooperate, even if you have bilateral problems. Because everyone can say, okay, I don't like you, I'm in a very, very bad relations with you, but okay, we are here, we discuss some issues common to all sides, and we'll temporarily forget what separates us, what is the friction between us. So I'm not very familiar what is the situation, what is the level of cooperation within SARC right now, but I know that in the past they had quite an important role. Yeah.
Every time when they had like some conflicts in the border areas, or something like India and Pakistan or India and Bangladesh, they just start to decrease their trade cooperations and something. I think it's directly affect their cooperations and something like SARC organizations, the international conflicts in the border areas. Yes. So how can this organization play a good role in for the regional for the regional cooperation, like if they are considered that these problems
by trying to look beyond the current cause of friction, of conflict, by trying to
Beyond the bilateral.
yeah, by trying to depict the interests that are common to a larger group of countries. It's never either or. It's never black or white. It's a process which has its lows and ups and downs.
Thank you.
Other questions? Just one word on what you said. I don't think that, or I'm not sure, that this process of deglobalization you depict is even or homogeneous. I give you a counter-example. I read recently that the flood of tourists in France, was this year about the same as the previous year, in spite of the, let's say, chaos caused by the Yellow Vest movement, all this. It has not changed, it's about the same. So it shows that maybe it can be contradictory from place to place, maybe.
Sure. I think it's parallel or have something corresponding to the state level.
Yeah.
You know, at the French case, there's nothing particularly, enmity or hostility by the populism, through the populism. So no problem. Just like, for example, recently, according to the news report, there's more Japanese tourists to Taiwan, and then they say that, well, we cannot go China, we cannot go Korea, so Taiwan. Similarly, when I was in Macau, a lot of Chinese tourists there, and they explain that now you cannot go Hong Kong, you cannot go Taiwan, so Macau is so it's uneven, of course, yeah.
Mm.
We can go to Croatia. Do you have any? No, at this moment of Asian? No. Really? Do you have one? Maybe I do have some questions, but I want to wait for students to several questions. Because we are thinking of how to move forward, right? Without just a blank face in optimism, but also not to fall into the trap of total pessimism. There are several, I just want to ask your comments or your perspectives. In India, maybe we start from India. There were this practice of not solid group, but I'm not really talking about the violence and these battles, but how they inspired local resistant groups on and on, okay, till today. And they start from the problems of the farmers, the poor people, the region, and then they try to work together, okay, including they inspire cinema in the aspect. Okay, so those are counter-state, counter-government action. But parallel to those, I know there are also education, universal education. They just mobilize a very wide-scale education, schools, or I don't know whether those include medical care, service, but they are, I think it started from the 70s till today. So this is one thing that I will start to think. Of course, when we talk about UN, it's always the